Welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast, the podcast where two ladies play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the podcast known as
The
Wheel of Crime
podcast.
Yes, that's us. My name is Jen.
I have been known to be Emily.
This is a much more formal introduction than we usually do, and I'm not really sure why.
We decided to be professionals over all of a sudden. Look at us go.
Yeah, I'm usually not professional at all in any capacity, so this is weird for me.
Not even in my dreams, my thoughts, none of it.
No, absolutely not.
Oh, yes, but hey, this is our Mother's Day episode.
Happy day to all of the mothers out there.
Yes, without you guys, we would not be here, so props to that.
Props to you. You did it.
Woohoo!
Congrats.
Yes. But before we get into today's episode, how was your last week, Jen? Anything you wanna share with the wheelies and the crimies?
Let me think. I don't really think so. It's been uneventful in a way, you know? There's been some things going on at work. But, nothing that exciting, honestly. Just some work drama. You know, the huge office politics.
Oh, yeah. Me, on the other hand, I thankfully, since working from home, do not get any of the workplace drama, which I actually do really appreciate sometimes. It's nice to hear the tea from other people and then just not be a part of the tea. That I really like.
Jealous.
Yeah, no, just work. And then, so I'm not sure if I've mentioned this on the show before, so I think I've mentioned previously that I moved out to a lake. Specifically a golf course. And now that we're in the spring months here, life around my house has become very weird all of a sudden. People are like, it's like the middle of a Tuesday. People are drunk doing wheelies in the parking lot on their golf carts and other fucking nonsense. And I'm like, who let you guys out of the house? How did you get here?
Yeah, like who let them out of their enclosures?
Exactly. Or like because it's like lake-ish, there's also like 800 birds outside, and you would think that I'm over-exaggerating on the amount of birds, but it really isn't an over-exaggeration. I literally sat at my desk working and watched as like ducks, crows, geese, loons, magpies, robins, woodpeckers, every single bird that you can think of that's like a casual Albertan outdoor bird flew or walked or was like on the lawn at my house. And then when I thought I'd seen enough, I literally watched an eagle being chased by like 3 crows fly through my front yard, and I'm like, how?
That's
I
crazy.
grew up in the city. This kind of bullshit doesn't happen where I'm from.
You know what's funny? Where I used to live in Calgary, there was always birds, you know, around. And I lived in like pretty central, like nearish downtown area. And now I've moved further south and there's no fucking birds here. Like, it's like a quiet suburban area, which I hate, but there's no fucking birds. So the birds also hate the suburbs, is what I've learned from living here.
That is so weird. See, that's like previously in like our last place, there was never any birds there. Like, there was a magpie that like stole some hardware off of my bicycle at one point, but like that was the only thing we ever saw when we were there. Yeah, right? And we were there for like 4.5 years. And now at this new place, like I said, 800 birds in one day. And I'm like, oh my God, like, is this your vacation? Do you guys just like come here to hang out? Like, what happens?
They must. It's freaking bird palooza over there.
It really is Birdapalooza. I like cracked open the window to let in some fresh air, and just the cacophony of bird calls. It was like, rah, rah,
Oh
rah,
my
rah. And I
gosh.
was like, oh my god, where did you all come from?
They're everywhere. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that for you, and I'm jealous.
Right? Well, the cats have really been loving it too. I would really love to be in their little furry mittens, experiencing the multitude of bird calls. Our one girl, she keeps sitting up in the window, and then every time a bird flies by, which is now constantly, a little bit of drool comes out of her mouth. And so,
Oh, no.
so by the end of the day, the little blanket they sit on by the window is just like soaked with spit, and I'm like, ooh, nice,
Oh,
right?
Jesus. She's enjoying it maybe too much.
She has big dreams, I'll say that much. But yeah, but on that note, should we spin our Wheel of Crime and get into today's super awesome episode?
Yes, spin away.
All right. So, who's your favorite mother from literature? And I just said literature because, like, whatever. But it's really like media, books, TV shows, movies. Like, who would be your number one mother figure you've seen in a fictional sense?
Ooh, anything Laura Dern is in?
That's interesting. I thought
She
for
could
sure.
be my mother.
I thought for sure you were gonna say Lorelai Gilmore.
See, I feel like that would have been my answer, but the more I watch Gilmore Girls, I'm like, she's kind of toxic. She's like a great friend to Lori.
Lori.
Wow. Rory. But I don't know if she's that good of a mother to her, you know?
Okay.
What's your thoughts on this subject?
See, it's really funny because when I made this question, Lorelai was one of my thoughts because I'm like, oh yeah, like she's fun, whatever. But I totally agree with you with like, I also think she makes a better friend than a mom. So then my second answer, which is also a person who is more of a friend than a mom, but also the kind of person I want to like grow up into being one day, Donna from Mamma Mia.
See, that's how I feel about Laura Dern. Like, I just want to be Laura Dern. I think it's
See, what gets me is like seeing her with like her grown friends, and she's like, like obviously life sucks because she sings money, 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 and the hotel's falling apart. But like for everything else, like like she has her besties with her. They all grew up together. She's got like 3 men who think she's like super hot. Her daughter's getting married. She lives on an island in Greece. I'm like, you know what? I think I want that.
she's living the dream.
That sounds really nice.
She's got
actually.
nothing to complain about.
This is what I'm saying. I'm like, you know what? That actually seems like a pretty sweet deal. Actually, I would not mind that. I she's my fave. I'm at this point.
Exactly. I love that for us.
Right? All right. Let's spin for our next question. I like that I have a silly little goofy voice today. But so our next question is, what's one of the weirdest things that you've ever seen a child do?
Ooh, I feel like children do a lot of weird things.
They absolutely do. I want to hear whatever your first one is that pops into your head.
I did once see a child use ketchup as paint
That's pretty
for a
good.
project. And I'm like, that is very, on your feet thinking. If you're out of red paint, then just pull up some ketchup, I guess.
Yeah, and it's safe to eat. Probably safer than paint.
I mean, I guess so. Not maybe when they mixed it with the acrylic paint they already had, but you know what? Points for inventiveness.
I like that. See, my first thought was when we were at the Globe Theater in England,
God.
and that child was just like vacuuming popcorn and gravel off of the ground directly into their face. They did not
That child was on another level.
They did not discriminate between popcorn or gravel. To them, it was one and the same.
Same texture. They're like, both delicious. I like the crunchy one best.
That's help my big teeth come in.
Pretty much. And also, the security guards at the Globe Theater, they did discriminate against us because they let that child sit down but yelled at us when we tried to sit down.
I know, right?
So.
What are we all but just like big kids? How dare they?
Exactly. If their feet are tired, so are mine.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, all right. Let's spin for our next question. So what's your opinion on Mother's Day? Like the holiday specifically. What's your thoughts about like the design of it, or, you know, just the day itself?
Not a mother myself, so can't really speak from that perspective. Well, I mean, I'm a mother to a bird, but I'm not sure that counts for most people. I feel like it's fine. I mean, it's nice to recognize the people that you love in your life, but I do feel like it is a little gimmicky and a little capitalist-esque with buy your mother a diamond bracelet commercials I hear every year, but I think it's good to appreciate the people that you love.
Yeah. I honestly don't really have anything else to add because my opinion is exactly the same as yours, where, you know, it's always nice to, for the sentimental sake, to appreciate the people around you for the hard work that they do. However, at the same time, the day does feel it's a little bit capitalistic in designs. So,
yeah,
that
it's
part I
like
don't
Valentine's
really...
Day, where it's like, oh, nice day to, you know, be with my boyfriend or husband or whatever, girlfriend, wife, person I like, crush. But at the same time, it's like, nah, they set that up just to sell you shit.
Absolutely. And, like, I think it's one thing, though, if you, like... Well, like, say, for example, if you use the capitalism for you, like, buying the spicy cinnamon heart candies on Valentine's Day for yourself because they come out once a year and they are tasty. Like, that's a good one.
You know what? Live your dream. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep.
That's been my my go-to catchphrase lately is live your dream.
I love that because it's almost philosophical where people have to sit there and be like, what is my dream? Do I even know my dream?
It's mainly been used for my partner whenever he's like, should I buy this? And I'm like, you know what, babe? Live your dream. Buy it.
He's like, that sounds like a yes to me. I will get that PS5.
Exactly.
Oh, God,
I
that's
can't
funny.
say shit. We both bought iPads. Like, I don't know what's happening here over here. There's something still in the water.
Listen, I already know too much about what's in the water, but I don't want to talk about it anymore because it makes me sad. But on that note, let's spin for our last question. That was a juicy spin. All right. So, what does your family normally do for Mother's Day? Do you guys have like particular traditions for these types of holidays to make it your own, or is there like what do you do?
Well, usually we just like go over to we do like one of two things. We either like go over to my parents' house and have like me and my brother will bring over dinner or cook dinner or something and just eat in their backyard and like hang out, or we'll go out to a restaurant with my mom and buy her dinner. That's kind of our go-to thing from the last few years. So that's probably what we're going to be doing this year.
Nice. I like that. That seems very simple, but in a nice way. With my family, it really depends because, like, on one hand, my dad always wants to do like a big thing, but there's also 6 of us, so that's not exactly like feasible most of the time nowadays. So it's been like a mixture of people usually bringing over like flowers or like candy or gift cards, and then usually going out to dinner or like ordering in Chinese food because she really loves Chinese food. And other than that, that's been the most like frequent thing. It just changes every year on who gets the flowers and who brings the chocolate and who does these different things because people are doing different things all the time. But
yeah, me and my brother usually we get her some flowers as well, like potted plants or whatever.
That's
and
a good
then dinner, and we just split both.
yeah. Or last year I did take my mom to the greenhouse for Mother's Day and then got her a plant that way. That was my thing.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, because then I get a little something out of it too. Everybody wins.
Exactly. You get to also shop for plants. So it's a win-win-win.
That's what I'm saying. All right. So, you want to take a stab at what my story is today for you? You are never going to guess in a million bajillion years, but...
I mean, to our listeners, since this is our Mother's Day special, we are both sharing a story today.
Yes.
But Emily will go first. I have no fucking idea. I'm going to guess you're going to talk about a mother who's actually a gremlin in disguise and has long fingernails like creepy vampire men.
That would be fun. But no, I'm actually taking our Mother's Day episode today on a little spin because you cannot be a mother without having children. And so, I'm going to read out my description for you. You ready?
Oh boy, I don't know if I am, but take it away.
So, the legend of the Green Children of Woolpit concerns two children of unusual skin color who reportedly appeared in the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England, sometime in the 12th century during the reign of King Stephen. He was born in the year 1135 and died in the year 1154. And the children, found to be brother and sister, were of generally normal appearance except for the green color of their skin. They spoke in an unknown language and would only eat raw beans. Eventually they learned to eat other food and lost their green color, but the boy was sickly and died soon after his sister was baptized.
You're right, I never would have guessed that in a bajillion years. That would have literally never crossed my mind before this moment.
I did not think so, but it's funny because this particular story, the Green Children of Woolpit, comes up on the internet like so often, especially like in March, April, May area, like in the springtime. Randomly,
does it? I've literally never heard of it before. Maybe on your For You page.
Oh, homie, you and I have completely different things that we follow on the internet. Mine's are all like spooky mysteries and legends of the world, or mysteries of the world, and this is the kind of stuff it comes up on.
It's true. Mine's like, this teenage girl murdered her mom.
Ghastly. But yes, I'm going to tell you a little bit, though, about, like, the story of these children, some theories around these children, that kind of thing, and the lives after their discovery, okay?
Okay. Take it away.
All right. So, the village of Woolpit is in the county of Suffolk, East Anglia, about 7 miles east of the town of Bury St. Edmunds, which... I don't know where that is, but it sounds European.
Sure does.
It sure does. So during the Middle Ages, it belonged to the Abbey of Bury St. Edmunds and was part of one of the most densely populated areas in rural England. Two writers, Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh, reported on the sudden and unexplained arrival in the village of two green children during one summer in the 12th century. Ralph was the abbot of Cistercian Coggeshall Abbey at Coggeshall, which was about 26 miles south of Woolpit, and William was a canon at the Augustinian Newburgh Priory, all church-related business, far to the north of Yorkshire. William states that the account given in his book Historiam Rerum Anglicarium is based on reports from a number of trustworthy resources. So Ralph, in writing his book, I don't know how to say anything that came before the 2000s, so I'm just gonna rock with like the actual mathematical way of saying it, which is the years roughly of the 1220s. Yeehaw. So
all right.
Yeah, so that's when he wrote his book. And it drew on the account of Sir Richard de Calne of Wykes. All of this is very English so far. Who...
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, very English, very churchy. We'll see how this goes. So, he drew on the account of Sir Richard in his book, who supposedly sheltered the children in his manor house, which was 6 miles north of Woolpit. So while it was common for medieval chroniclers to copy other passages verbatim, often with little or no attribution, the accounts given by the two authors differ in some details. So um, basically, Michael Madej at Jagiellonian University does not believe that either William or Ralph, which are the two main sources that people use when they're researching these children, um, does not believe that either of them had seen each other's manuscripts when they were telling the stories of these green children. So they're two stories that were potentially word of mouth stories that are now chronically documented as stories of these green children, but they're two different stories. So,
like, independent of one another?
Yes, exactly. They're independent of one another. So,
I wonder if the children were just really seasick, so they were like kind of green and like, "Ooh, I'm gonna throw up," and people were just like, "Those children are so green. They must be magical or something."
Dude, they've got so many theories. You just gotta wait. Like, this is like the hard facts of it first, because I gotta give something since we're talking about green children. But like, we're gonna get into the theories here soon, okay?
The hard facts. That's a very liberal term to use.
Hard
Emily.
Facts. So,
all right.
So, he argues that while Ralph was based approximately 40 kilometers of Woolpit, William recorded it virtually from the other side of England. So they kind of take his account as being like probably the least factual of the two accounts of like what happened. And then Ralph, after all, names his sources, whereas William states that he heard the tale from various unnamed persons, which is also suspicious. So, John Clark has suggested that it's possible that Richard was the source of both the writers, and while that William was more distant, he was likely to have contacts with the Augustinian Thetford Abbey. While Ralph was closer geographically, however, he was writing decades after William, and although William was writing relatively soon after the events depicted, Campbell has suggested that his writing is hemmed with doubts as to what he is writing, although he states the words, some obrutus, ut cogagur credier. Obviously, I speak Latin. Which
yeah, I thought you were fluent.
Yeah, very fluent. Which translates to something vaguely along the lines of, I am compelled to believe, but literally, when you take it, means I am crushed sufficiently that I'm forced to believe it. So basically, what all of that garbage I just told you means that there's like a whole university study like of the linguistics of both of these books that they found talking about this incident, and even though one of them's closer in location and therefore they believe that it's supposed to be believable, they don't really want to, because it also seems nonsensical. But then if you read both of them, neither one of them is more sensical than the other one, so there literally are no good options. They just basically said, we're choosing to believe this one because we have to believe one of them as far as like translating texts go, and as sad as I am about it, this is what we're rolling with, is basically what that means.
I understand their position.
Me too. That's why when I was like reading through it, I was like, this is just a really fancy way of saying we're gonna roll with that. That's basically what that means.
This is a bunch of bullshit, but here you go.
Literally. So here's the like story now that we're past, like I said, the quote unquote hard facts of the origin story of the Children of Woolpit. So
those quotes are in bold,
super bold. So at harvest time, one day during the reign of King Stephen, like we discussed, according to William of Newburgh, which is the account we're going after, the villagers of Woolpit discovered two children, a brother and a sister, beside one of the wolf pits that gave the village its name. Their skin was green, they spoke an unknown language, and their clothing was unfamiliar. Ralph of Cogshell reports that the children were then taken to the home of Richard, and Ralph and William agree that the pair refused all food for the next several days until they came across raw beans, or they're called raw broad beans, which I'm fairly certain is a type of green bean.
That would make sense. For some reason in my head, these children just look like the Green Giant logo anyways, so...
Literally, that is what they look like. Like, if you look at illustrations that people made of these children, they look like teeny tiny versions of the Jolly Green Giant.
Okay. Glad to know my imagination's in the right place then.
You 100%. You're doing good. So basically, these children ate nothing but beans, and then they consumed them eagerly. So they like starved for days, saw these
No, they
like
did
raw
not.
green beans, and they were like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah."
I could never, even if I was starving.
See,
I'm sorry, green beans are
I
nasty.
unfortunately believe this because there was a time that I went to the grocery store with my younger siblings, and one of my brothers, my brother Aiden, he's the one with autism, was given a choice onto whether or not we could get a package of cookies or a package of green beans. He was given a choice between the two because he had to pick the treat for everybody. Guess which one he picked?
Green bean.
He picked the green beans. And then you want to know what he did? He ate all of the green beans before we got home. So, children are weird, and they will eat beans for some reason instead of cookies sometimes.
I mean, all I can say to him is live your dream, boy.
Live your dream. So, they like chowed down on these beans, and then the children gradually adapted to eating normal food and in time lost their green color. It was then decided at this point to baptize the children, but the boy, who was the younger of the two, grew sickly and died either like shortly before or after he was baptized. They're not really sure. So after learning to speak English, the children, Ralph says, just the surviving girl, explained that they came from a land where the sun never shone and the light was like twilight. William says that the girl called their home St. Martin's Land. Ralph adds there that everything there was green to the two of them. So, like, this girl says they come from St. Martin's Land, which is apparently a land where it's like forever twilight. They have no sun, and everything is green. The people are green, the food is green, their homes are green, everything's green.
How strange.
Right? So, according to William, the children were unable to account for their arrival in Woolpit, but say that they had been herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise, which, according to William, was like the sound of the bells in Bury St. Edmund's Abbey, and then suddenly found themselves by the wolf pit where they were found. Ralph says that they had become lost when they followed the cattle into a cave, and then after being guided by the sound of bells, eventually emerged into our land. So, according to Ralph, the girl was employed for many years as a servant in Richard de Calne's household, where she was considered to be a very wanton and impudent.
I see. That is unfortunate.
Yeah. It's such a weird description reading how like people used to describe women back in the day, because wanton is another way of saying lonely. So basically they say that she's lonely and doesn't like to listen to people is what that means.
You know, me and her, same person maybe.
Perhaps.
Except for lonely. I wish people talked to me less, actually.
You're like instead of being lonely, I would like to embrace the lonely. I wish there was more to it.
That's the trait I want, and the not listening to people is the one I already have.
So you're just
So I'm
halfway
halfway there.
Almost. You just also need to be green is the thing, and to have mysteriously walked through a cave while herding your father's cattle.
You know, I think I could get there. I won't eat green beans, but I could do like edamame or like snow peas or something.
Edamame. We'll just call you the
Broccoli.
The edamame child of the cesspit we grew up in.
Of the cesspit we All right. I don't think I want to be known for that.
That's really funny.
I try and disassociate from that, actually.
I know you do. That's what makes it funny. So that's how they describe her. And Williams says that she eventually ended up marrying a man from King's Lynn, which is a town that was 40 miles away from Woolpit, where she was still living shortly before he wrote this like document. And based on his research into Richard de Calne's family history, the astronomer and writer Duncan Lunan has concluded that the girl was given the name Agnes, and she married a royal officer named Richard Bear. So, neither Ralph of Cogshall or William of Newburgh offer an explanation for the strange and prodigious event, as William calls it, and some historians have the same reticence. I consider the process of worrying over the suggestive details of those wonderfully pointless miracles in an effort to find natural or psychological explanations of what really, if anything, happened to be useless to the study of William of Newburgh, or for that matter, the Middle Ages, says Nancy Pardner, author of a study of 12th century historiography. So basically, what she's saying is that to even be putting like any kind of weight to these stories, especially considering like the time, is to make a mockery of historical documentation from the Middle Ages, because it's such like
baloney.
Not even baloney, because it's not even like you can prove that a story from the 12th century is or isn't baloney. It's more like the way that they wrote it is done in such like an unconvincing manner and written to be historical that people who look at it, who like study medieval history, usually frown upon this like pretty heavily, because it's almost like to them like a waste of chronological history for them to document something that is more than likely a mildly fictitious story.
Yeah. It's like, it reminds me of, like, I don't know if your mom ever said this, like, if you eat too many carrots, then your skin will turn orange or whatever, right?
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like the idea behind it, and that's just generally what she's saying. So, nonetheless, such explanations continue to be sought, and two approaches have dominated explanations of the mystery of the Green Children. So the first is that the narrative descendants from folklore describing an imaginary encounter with the inhabitants of a fairy underworld, or otherworld, and in a few early as well as modern retellings, this otherworld is extraterrestrial, and the Green Children are alien beings. And the second is that the garbled account of a real event, although it is impossible to be certain whether the story as recorded in an authentic report given by the children or adult invention, his study of the story led Charles Oman to conclude that there is clearly some mystery behind it all, some story of drugging and kidnapping potentially, and then medievalist Geoffrey Jerome Cohen offers a different kind of historical explanation, arguing that the story is an oblique account of the racial difference between the English and indigenous Britons. So what all that means is people speculate so much on this as to what like the deal is with the actual children. The leading theory being that there's possibly some kind of like verbal folklore in the area, that this kind of like just like morphed into becoming an actual story, but it's actually based off of like a fictitious story that was meant to be fictitious, or that it was aliens, or it was racism. So it's one of the three.
I'm gonna go with it was probably racism.
It was probably racism, or like you said, something where like people were warned if they ate too many beans they would turn green, and then magically green bean children turned up. It's gotta be one of the two.
Like something said to like scare kids into not doing something their parents didn't want them to do. And so then it just turned into a real story, even though it was just like one of those things that parents say.
Exactly. And then to like the whole justification behind like say like the other 2 points they gave, which is either aliens or racism, is the aliens being the explanation for this like other world that the girl mentions in this retelling, because they don't really explain that really anywhere else either, other than they have a documented account of Agnes talking about this place they come from, but that's really all they got. So potentially aliens. And then the racism part of it is between basically the English people currently of that medieval age and indigenous Britons, which would have been the indigenous people in the area, that they were potentially trying to create a story of like otherism and like that kind of thing, to kind of like draw lines in the sand, is kind of how they mention that this could be a point of racism.
Right. I don't know. I feel like kids make shit up all the time, so it could have just been some kid being like, oh yeah, I came from space. It's like dark and twilight there.
Right? I know. That was kind of my thought too, is like with kids, you never really know. It's always a interesting experience.
You know what they say? Kids say the darndest things.
That they do. All right, so I'm kind of going to go over a couple other theories that people have, or like different, like, because this is one of those stories that, like, especially because it was actually documented, that people really read into and they try to find like a reasoning behind why this story exists and why they care to document it. So, like, another person came up with this idea where, so Martin Walsh says that basically the story of the Green Children could be a garbled account of what's considered to be an atavistic harvest ritual. So he considers these references in the story to Saint Martin's to be significant because it ties a lot into like how different accounts in books reference this particular type of harvest ritual. So he thinks it could be that. As well, medieval folklore closely associated Saint Martin. So there was a Saint Martin who was around. So he kind of wonders if maybe Saint Martin and Saint Martin's land are meant to be tied together. So,
Right.
So medieval folklore closely associates him, Saint Martin, with symbols of death, such as him being mounted on a horse, which is a common psychopomp of death, and or psychopomp of the time period, and his carrying a stick symbolizes resurrection. He also suggests that, so this is Martin Walsh, suggests that the two children may represent simultaneously life and death in like a retelling of this like ritual story.
Right.
And similarly, near contemporaneous tales of something called the Green Knight, which is a known medieval folklore story. And the children's pigmentation change would symbolize the passing of death to life and the revival occurring underground as they overground as they were found by like wolf pits and stuff, which is definitely an interesting take, but like I don't know too much about medieval history, so I would assume whatever resources he has probably reference enough different things for him to come to this conclusion.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because like usually in like folklore and stuff, children represent like innocence or like a loss of innocence. So it's interesting that they're in here instead they're being used to represent like life and death, because I feel like usually they do represent like new life.
Usually, yeah, so that is interesting. And then too, he does reference the story of the Green Knight a couple of times, which, like I said, I'm not really sure exactly what that story would entail, but it makes me wonder if maybe the symbolism of children representing new life is more of modern symbolism rather than back then when children were dying a lot younger, maybe?
That's a good point.
Right? So then, too, another part is the eating of the beans in the story. So that people put a lot of emphasis on why the fuck these kids were eating these green beans. So, basically, folklorists have said it is to be noticed, too, that the habitual food of children, or these children, was the beans, which at the time was considered to be the food of the dead. This is an observation made by somebody named K.M. Briggs, and she made the same observation about the food of the dead in a book that she wrote in 1967 called The Fairies in English Tradition and Literature. So that's like one form of symbolism. And then another man named John Clark kind of like debated Briggs's like association, saying that the identification of beans as the food of the dead is more or less unwarranted. However, he does agree that beans are in many cultures associated with the dead. So he's basically like, maybe not here, but in other places. And then Madej also argues that not only had broad beans been the symbol of death and corruption since the ancient times, which I did not know previously, they were also associated with the opposite phenomena, which is also rebirth and fertility, which I feel like is old symbolism versus new symbolism, but what do I know?
Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
Opposites attract, I guess.
Yeah, right? And then, so there is a modern version of this tale, which links the Green Children to a more modern trope, which is called the Babes of the Woods. And so, although there's different stories, the common motif is that people take children and leave them in the woods to die, or live or die. And so the point is called, it's like known as the Wayland Wood or the Thetford Forest, or after being poisoned by their uncle. So that's like the story of the Babes in the Woods. So basically, I know I'm kind of like fumbling through this a bit, because the Babes of the Woods is a story about children who were left in the forest by their uncle who poisoned them with arsenic. But the trope babes in the forest is when people would take their children into the forest and then see if the forest decides to take them, which is kill them, or leave them alone, which is allow them to live.
Right.
So then, since that's like...
I mean, that seems like a very extreme thing to do to a child, but, all right.
It's like a weird thing where even, I did way long ago, I can't remember how long ago now, when we did the Changeling episode, that's how people used to identify changelings in the same time area, was they would go and leave their babies in the forest, and if they were taken, then they could assume that their babies were changelings, and the fairies were taking them back, but if their child died, or left their baby, or if the changelings left their baby alive, then that meant that they were humans and they were allowed to bring their baby home.
Weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things about what medieval people did with their children. But then, so this story, Babes of the Woods, which is, like I said, the modern retelling of this, after they get poisoned with arsenic by their uncle, it's this, like, arsenic poisoning that in this story results in their green skin, which then is, like, how people have related that modern story, or, like, modern-ish story with the Children of Woolpit. So they're meant to be, like, the same thing, basically.
Right.
And then, basically, so as far as, like, the alien side of things go, a lot of people who are going with the alien hypothesis really believe that the St. Martin's Land is maybe pronounced differently. Like, they just said St. Martin's Land, but it's actually, it's called something else, and that may have actually been another planet. Which I'm not sure how that works if they walk through a cave to get to Woolpit, but I digress. But the idea is that the reason that they became green is because of, like, the alien vegetation and that kind of thing.
Because aliens are green, duh.
Yes. And then the other, because there's, like I said, there's so many different theories that people have come up with because it fascinates them and confounds people. So, kind of in the same vein of what we've been talking about, that, like, another theory that I've read a couple times is, that they kind of, like, talk about the children as if they're, like, fallen angels. As if they were somewhere that's heavenly, and then accidentally fell to earth, and that's why they had a different color and that kind of thing. Which is weird, also.
All right. The further up you go, the greener you get.
Yeah. And then, also, like, basically, so that's, like, one theory that people go with, but it's, like, not one of the most popular theories. The most popular being, you know, the aliens, the folklore, or the racism. So falling from heaven's one of the non-popular theories that people like to talk about. And then one of the other non-popular theories that people like to talk about is that they may have actually just been Flemish, as in from another country, and had been sailing and accidentally washed up on the shore of England and walked all that way to Woolpit.
That's what I frickin' said.
Yep. Well, that's why when you were talking about it, I was like, you're so close. Because the idea is that if these people had seen a couple of kids who were Flemish, wearing Flemish clothing, speaking Flemish language, who maybe had been eating stuff that they found in the forest for like a couple weeks and then became green because of it.
Yeah. Seasick.
Right? Yeah. And apparently there's a condition which could be explaining their color as well, if that is what happened. And it's called hypochromatic anemia, which is also known as chlorosis or green sickness, and it's a result of a dietary deficiency.
Science at work.
Science. And so basically, that is like my very, very abridged version of the Children of Woolpit. I could have made this seriously into like 2 different episodes, but my thing was that a lot of it was historical floof where a bunch of people argue with each other. So I was like, I'll just give you guys what the story was, what they wrote, what people think, what the theories are, and all of that. And to close my little part of the story is I'll just tell you a quote. I'll finish it off with a quote from historian Derek Brewer's explanation of the Children of Woolpit. Okay?
Okay.
So he says, The likely core of the matter is that these very small children, herding or following flocks, had strayed from another village, spoke very little English, or barely enough, and did not know their own home address. They probably suffered from this chlorosis thing that I just described to you, like the condition.
Yeah.
Which is a deficiency disease that gives the skin a greenish hint, which then would describe the green sickness. And with the better diet and staying in the village and, being taken care of by people, eventually disappeared. Probably because of that. And so, that is my little factual end to the somewhat mysterious story of the Green Children of Woolpit.
What's your top theory? What do you think happened?
Ooh. See, from everything I read, because I quite literally read through so many different theories of different people who read history fighting with each other about this, and I truly do think they probably had that anemia thing that made their skin green, and that's probably what gave them the green skin. But as to where they're from, I know it's not one of the more popular theories. I actually think they might have been from another country and ended up there by accident. They say so the reason why that's not a popular theory is because they're oh, well, how would they have been following their father's flock then if they were from another country? And it's well, if they were young enough to not have realized that they fell off a boat or something, right, then they might have really thought that they were still home and trying to find their way home, and how they got home usually was by following flocks of sheep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So that's my theory on it. It was very entertaining reading a bajillion theories about aliens. However, I'm not convinced that it was aliens, and then also, because the main thing on why people think it's aliens and why that's also another popular theory is because of that girl's explanation of St. Martin's Land. But like you said earlier, sometimes kids like to make up things, especially if it seems kind of fantastical, and maybe they're thinking that the adults just want a story, not necessarily the truth. So I kind of think that's maybe what happened. I'm not totally sure that I buy her story. But yeah, no, that's what I think. What about you?
I'm going to go with it was probably the anemia, and that they were from a different country and just were very confused.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Because also, they never mention ages in any of this, in any of these, historical things from those, two guys who wrote, different stories about the same thing at slightly different times. Neither of them mention ages. They just mention that they were really, really young. The boy was younger. He ends up dying. And that she only remembers, small details about, showing up in the first place. So, yeah.
Yeah, that just screams, confused child to me.
Literally. That was my thought, too. I was I feel many people are confused. The historians are confused. The original writers are confused. The people in the village are confused. The children are confused. I'm confused.
Everyone is fucking confused.
Literally.
Including me.
Yeah, and that is my little Mother's Day story for you. Did you have fun?
I did. Are you ready to hear about some crime from me?
Always.
All right, so for my nice little cheery Mother's Day story, I'm going to tell you about Susan Lee Smith, who was born on September 26, 1971 in Union, South Carolina. She had a very unstable childhood. Her father took his own life when she was 6 years old, and Susan herself attempted suicide at age 13. Her mother then married Beverly Russell, a member of the local chapter of the Christian Coalition, who later was revealed to have molested Susan when she was a teenager. One newspaper claimed that the sexual relations between them had continued well into Susan's adulthood.
That's a big yikes for me, dog. Ooh, I hate stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So, not off to a great start. After graduating from high school in 1989, Susan made a second attempt to kill herself after a married man she was in a relationship ended their affair. Susan really struggled with depression and attempted to take her own life on more than one occasion. This followed her into several up and down relationships, including one she began with a man named David Smith, whom she obviously married because her last name is Smith. So
that checks out. I mean, Smith is a common last name, but I figured that might have been it.
Yes. So the two eventually married once Susan became pregnant. But even after the birth of her 2 boys, their relationship remained rocky and there were indiscretions on both sides. So they were both cheating on each other.
That's definitely a rocky start.
Yes. During one of their many separations, Susan began having a relationship with a man named Tom Findlay, who was known as one of the most eligible bachelors in Union. And honestly, Union's pretty small, so there's not much choice, Tom. You're not really winning any awards there.
The fact that they even had to, like, write that as a title, like, he was known as one of the most eligible bachelors. And it's like, if anyone ever described anyone I know like that, they would never live it down. I'd be like,
no.
Oh, if it isn't the most eligible bachelor of blank and blank.
Like, I would make fun of them relentlessly.
Until the end of time. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, with Tom, Susan finally believed that she would be able to have some stability in her life. But she was unfortunately mistaken. Tom did not want the responsibility of a ready-made family, i.e. he was not interested in her children that she had from a previous marriage. He also wasn't convinced that their different backgrounds and Susan's behavior towards other men were suitable for a committed relationship. He sent a Dear John letter of sorts explaining all of this in October of 1994. And Susan would later say that she had never felt so alone in her life. And by the way, as a quick side note, allegedly the inappropriate relationship with her stepfather was still going on around this time. So this woman's dealing with a lot.
Yeah, that's a multitude of bad things all going on at once. That's terrible.
Like, ugh.
Yeah.
Don't love it. I don't like it at all, actually.
Absolutely not. Don't like it.
It's going to be a no. So, on October 25th, 1994, a crying Susan was found on the doorstep of a residence near John D. Lake, claiming that she had been carjacked by a black man and that her sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-year-old Alex, were kidnapped during the crime. For 9 days, her and her husband David pleaded with the press for the safe return of their sons. But to many acquaintances and the authorities, something about this whole situation just seemed off. Susan's story was riddled with holes, and each time she was asked about the incident, she changed her story. She took several polygraph tests, and they were all inclusive. Many of her friends talked about how Susan kept asking if Tom was coming to see her, which they found odd for a woman who should be distraught over her missing children. 9 days after the kids went quote-unquote missing, on November 3rd, 1994, Susan confessed. After multiple days of intense scrutiny and media attention, she couldn't take the pressure anymore, so she confessed that she made up the whole scenario and that she killed her 2 kids.
I had a feeling after you said that this new man did not want somebody who already had kids and then suddenly they went missing. I was like, oh, I don't like where this is going.
Yeah, I don't like where it's going either, but here we are. On the night of October 25th, she had driven down the road with her 2 sons in the backseat. Feeling lonely and suicidal, she drove to John D. Lake and originally planned to roll into the lake with her car. She abandoned her plans and got out and watched the car in neutral roll into the water. She was able to give authorities the location of the car, and scuba divers found it and the bodies of her 2 young sons. She said that there was no motive, nor did she plan the murders, stating that she was not in the right state of mind. Which I actually do believe. Like, it seems like she was very unstable emotionally and distraught. Mm-hmm. So, like, I could literally believe this was like a random, spontaneous decision in like a moment of like her own.
And like considering too just everything else that she has going on in her life, like you could definitely tell that she is mentally unwell to some capacity, like
Mm-hmm.
even before this happened. So I could understand that too, yeah.
And a lot of people speculate that she was dealing with like some serious postpartum at this time, like from
Mm.
her 2-year-old son still, and like that I was like going unmedicated. So
Well, that's possible too, yeah, because a lot of the times when people come with these cases of familial murder where it's the mother killing their children, for example, it usually does have some sort of tie to postpartum depression that's not being treated.
yeah, very sad. So later investigation revealed that the detectives doubted Susan's story from the start and believed that she murdered her sons. By the second day of the investigation, the police suspected that she knew their location and hoped they were still alive. Investigators started to search the nearby lakes and ponds, including John D. Lake, where their bodies were eventually found. Initial water searches did not locate the car because the police believed it would have been within 30 feet off the shore, but did not search further, and it turned out to be 122 feet from the shore. So she really got it in there.
She sure did. That's a long way to go.
It sure is. Yep. So after the boys had been missing for 2 days, Susan and David did their polygraph tests, and Susan's, of course, came back inconclusive. So everyone was mad suspicious of her from pretty much the get-go.
Yeah, that checks out, especially if she had any other people in her family who were like aware of kind of the background stuff on what was going on with like her relationship with that guy and like some other stuff too. I would also be a little speculative at this point.
Yeah. The biggest breakthrough in the case was her description of the carjacking location. She claimed that a traffic light had turned red, causing her to stop at an otherwise empty intersection. However, it was determined that the light would not have turned red for her unless a vehicle was present on the intersecting road. This conflicted with her statement that she did not see any other cars when the carjacking took place. So a little hitch in the logistics there for her.
Yeah.
Didn't quite think that one through.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
No, I'm literally just thinking about it, and I'm like, that is a good point, though. A lot of people would not think about the logistics of streetlights if you're just coming up with some kind of bullshit story you're hoping people will believe.
I know. But, like, I don't know if it's true for all, because I feel like I've pulled up at, like, a random intersection and the light will be red and there'll be no one else in sight. So...
Right? That's what I mean, though. Like, I would not have known that about, like, a random intersection, so maybe she was just trying her luck, but I don't know. Weird.
It was weird. At her trial, her defense attorneys, David Brooke and Judy Clark, claimed that Susan had a dependent personality disorder and severe depression, claiming that her need for a stable relationship with Tom overcame her moral judgment in committing this crime. Her attorneys called expert witnesses to testify that she had mental health issues that impaired her judgment when she committed the crimes. She was still convicted, however, in July 1995 for the murders, although was not given the death penalty. Susan was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Since her incarceration, 2 prison guards, Lieutenant Houston Cagle and Captain Alfred R. Rowe Jr., were fired and charged after admitting to sleeping with Susan, which resulted in her transfer multiple times through the prison system. She's currently serving her sentence at Leith Correctional Institution in Greenwood, South Carolina, and is eligible for parole on November 4th, 2024.
That's coming up right quick here in a couple of years.
A couple of years? That's next year.
Oh my god, you're right. I forgot what year it was for a minute. I was like, oh yeah, that's like 2 years away. No, that's not 2 years away. That's 1 year away. Oh my gosh. That's
I know.
crazy, dude. I feel so sad for her boys, though. That'd be so scary.
It would. Like, your mom rolling you guys into, like, she must have been barreling them into that fucking lake to get that far. And
That's
then
what I
she
mean,
ditches
right?
and you guys are stuck in the back seat.
Right? Yeah, the whole thing, like, especially like I was saying too, with like how postpartum depression affects people, and just these stories where parents end up murdering their children. It just always gives you such like a really sick feeling where you are so sad for the children because they don't know any better, you know, like they just
No.
100% believe in their parents and believe that they'll protect them, and then this bullshit happens, and it just makes you feel ill, or it makes me feel ill, anyways.
Makes me feel ill too. Don't like that.
Yeah, well, a depressing ending to our Mother's Day episode today. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, sorry guys.
That's
Didn't
good.
end on a light note here today.
Yeah, you guys got a quick green child snorer story, and then a nice murderous mother snorry as a finisher. So we hit all of our buttons today. And with that, if you liked today's episode, please leave us a review on wherever you're listening to podcasts. 5 stars is greatly appreciated because it helps us reach out to new listeners and all that. And anything less than that will probably make Jen cry, so please don't do that. And then besides that, we also have our website.
It's true, I'm very sensitive.
Very sensitive. And then we have our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com if you want to check us out on there. We have our social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Wheel of Crime. And then we also have our Patreon if you want to donate to the show and check us out on there. That is Wheel of Crime Podcast on Patreon. We also have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com if you want to send in your own story or give us a review of the show there, or just say a good word. You know, we always appreciate hearing from our listeners and all that stuff. It's, you know, it's really fun for us. And then lastly, we also still have our Google Doc open, as always, if people want to submit their own personal stories for a future listeners episode. So go check that out on our social media, and I believe that's everything.
Yeah, we're thinking about doing a listener story episode in the summer to get some summer vibes. So make sure you submit your stories and we can all drink margaritas and enjoy them together.
Exactly. What kind of stories are we looking for the summer? I want to hear some spooky beach stories. I want to hear about what else do I want to hear about? Things
What
like
you thought was a
beaches.
summer breeze in your hair, but was actually a ghost breathing down your neck.
A skeleton with it dragging its fingers across your brow.
If you have a story like that, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, or maybe you witnessed somebody stealing a skidoo and they ended up blowing through the side of a beach shack. Anything and everything. If you have a story that you think would send cool summer vibes and put everybody in a margarita mood, send it in. We love anything and everything.
Yes. All right, but I think that wraps up our episode for today.
It sure does, and we will all see you in the astral plane next Friday.
Okay, bye.
Bye.